The forgotten warning, the Grand Council chamber on Nexus Prime, had witnessed many declarations of war throughout its 10,000-year history, but none quite like this one. Supreme Commander Thrax of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the central podium, his obsidian exoskeleton gleaming under the ceremonial lights. His forearms gestured dramatically as he addressed the assembled representatives of 12 major galactic civilizations, esteemed members of the Galactic Council. Thrax's voice resonated through the vast chamber, each word carefully chosen for maximum dramatic effect. For 1,000 years, we have tolerated the arrogance of the human species. They sit in their corner of the galaxy, hoarding their resources, refusing to contribute to galactic civilization, claiming they seek only peace. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the alien delegates. The crystalline collective's representative chimed harmoniously in support, while the gas-form entities of the nebula nations swirled in approval patterns. Humanity had indeed been notably absent from galactic affairs for a millennium. But peace, Thrax continued, his mandibles clicking with contempt, is the luxury of the weak. While we have expanded our territories, conquered new worlds, and built mighty fleets, humans have grown soft. They speak of arts, of philosophy, of games and entertainment. They have forgotten the way of strength. Admiral Zephyr Kane sat quietly in the human delegation's modest section, a slight smile playing at the corners of his weathered face. At 67, he was one of the few humans old enough to remember the stories passed down from the pre-isolation era. His calm demeanor stood in stark contrast to the growing fervor in the chamber. Council mediator, Vexstar, a tall ethereal being from the neutral arbitration caste, gestured for order. Supreme Commander Thrax, you have called this assembly to make a formal declaration. Please state your intentions clearly. Thrax's chest swelled with pride. The Zephyrian Empire, backed by the Talon Federation and the Iron Claw Syndicate, hereby declares war upon the human species and all their territories. We demand their unconditional surrender within 7 galactic standard days, or we shall take their worlds by force. The chamber exploded in excited chatter. War declarations were rare in modern galactic politics, and the assembled delegates hadn't seen such drama in centuries. Most species had evolved beyond the need for direct military conflict, preferring economic or diplomatic pressure. Vexstar's multiple eyes focused on Admiral Kane. The Galactic Council recognizes the human representative. Admiral Kane, how does humanity respond to this declaration? Admiral Kane stood slowly, brushing an invisible speck of dust from his simple navy blue uniform. He looked around the chamber, taking in the expectant faces of beings from across the galaxy. Then, unexpectedly, he began to chuckle. The laughter started as a low rumble in his chest, then grew into genuine, wholehearted amusement. Soon, he was laughing so hard that tears formed in his eyes. The entire chamber fell silent, stunned by this bizarre response to a declaration of war. "I'm sorry," Kane gasped, wiping his eyes with the back of his hand. "I really am. It's just that you remind me so much of my grandson playing with his war figurines. He makes the same dramatic speeches before his battles." Thrax's exoskeleton darkened with rage. "You dare mock the might of the Zephyrian Empire? We have conquered 47 star systems. Our fleet numbers in the tens of thousands. Our warriors are trained from birth in the arts of war." "Oh, I'm sure they are," Kane replied, his amusement fading to something more serious. "Tell me, Commander, when was your last actual war? Not a skirmish with pirates or a quick annexation of a defenseless world. I mean a real war, where your entire civilization's survival was at stake. Thrax hesitated. The Great Conquest was completed 400 years ago. Since then, we have maintained order through strength and ... Right, Kane interrupted gently. 400 years ago, and before that, the Empire has been at peace. For millennia, but our military traditions ... Traditions. Kane nodded thoughtfully. We humans have a saying: those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. But there's another version. Those who forget history are doomed to become it. He activated his personal datapad, and the chamber's holographic display system came alive with images that made several delegates shift uncomfortably in their seats. Ancient human battlefields appeared in stunning detail, cities reduced to ash, planets scarred by weapons that defied comprehension. This, Kane said, softly, is why humanity chose isolation. This is what we did to ourselves the last time we went to war. Not conquest, not expansion, not glory, annihilation. We fought until there was nothing left to fight for, and then we kept fighting anyway. The images shifted to show the aftermath. Billions dead, entire continents uninhabitable, humanity's population reduced to a fraction of its former size. We called it the final war because we swore it would be the last one we ever fought, Kane continued. Not because we learned to love peace, Commander, but because we discovered we loved war. Too much. We were too good at it. So we made a choice that no other species in galactic history has ever made. We voluntarily gave up our greatest talent. Thrax scoffed, though with less conviction than before. Ancient history, your species has grown. Weak in your isolation, 1,000 years of peace has made you soft. Has it? Kane asked, and now his smile returned, but it was different, colder. Tell me, what do you know about human recreational activities during our peaceful millennium? Games, thrax, spat, entertainment, frivolity, indeed. Kane's fingers danced across his datapad, bringing up new images. Let me show you some. Of our games, the holographic display filled with scenes from what appeared to be massive military exercises. Thousands of humans in full combat gear engaged in complex tactical maneuvers. Orbital bombardments lit up the darkness of space. Ground forces advanced with precision that would make professional armies weep with envy. This is from last year's Continental Wargames Championship on New Terra, Kane explained. 12 million participants. The rules are simple. 2 sides, each controls half a continent. Last one standing wins. No restrictions on tactics, strategy, or technology short of actual death. Several delegates were now leaning forward, studying the images intently. The Mars League runs similar competitions, but there's focus on space combat. They've been refining fleet tactics for 8 centuries. Their current grand champion has commanded simulated fleets of over 1 million vessels. Kane switched to different footage. Humans engaged in hand-to-hand combat with an intensity that bordered on savage. Our martial arts evolved too, he continued. When you remove the possibility of death, combat becomes pure art. We have fighting tournaments where participants train their entire lives for a single match. Styles that incorporate weapons, technology, and tactics that would be illegal in actual warfare. Asterisk simulations, THRAKX insisted, though his voice carried less certainty. Pretend wars fought by pretend soldiers. Oh, absolutely, Kane agreed, cheerfully. Just like your warriors trained in simulations, right? Except our simulations involve actual experience, pain a filer, and consequences when a human loses a war game. They might lose years of their life in preparation. When they win, they achieve glory that lasts generations. He gestured to the holographic display again, showing a different scene. Massive industrial complexes stretching across entire moons. We've also had hobbies in engineering. Turns out, when you're not building weapons to kill your enemies, you can focus on building weapons to kill them more efficiently. Theoretical weapons, hypothetical delivery systems. We've had 1,000 years to ask what if without needing to worry about what then. The display showed blueprints for devices that made several delegates recoil in horror. Planet killers. Weapons that existed purely in theory but were documented with the thoroughness of grocery lists. The Titan Research Collective published a paper last year. Kane continued conversationally. 47 different methods for sterilizing a star system. They calculated the resource requirements, timeframes, and optimal deployment strategies. Won the Nobel Prize for Theoretical Engineering. The committee called it beautifully elegant work and deeply disturbing in its thoroughness. Mediator Vextar's crystalline form had taken on a nervous shimmer. Admiral Kane, surely you're not suggesting that humanity has spent 1,000 years preparing for war? Oh goodness no, Kane laughed. We've spent 1,000 years perfecting war. There's a difference. Preparing implies we might not be ready. We've been ready for 950 years. The last 50 we've just been ... refining. His expression grew more serious as he looked directly at Thrax. Commander, do you know why every other species in the galaxy accepted humanity's choice of isolation without question? Why no one ever tried to force us back into galactic affairs? Thrax's exoskeleton had faded to a dull grey. Because ... because you were peaceful. No, Kane said quietly. Because the older civilizations remembered what we were capable of. They kept the records. They passed down the warnings. They knew that humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was our voluntary restraint. He stood and walked closer to the Zephyrian delegation. You know what humans call 1,000 years of peace, Commander? Practice time. The chamber had fallen completely silent. Even the background hum of the environmental systems seemed muted. Your declaration of war has been received and acknowledged, Kane announced formally. Humanity accepts. We'll try to make it educational. For you, he turned toward the exit, then paused. Oh, and Commander, you might want to check the galactic news feeds. Word of your declaration reached human space about an hour ago. As if summoned by his words, Mediator Vextar's communication array began chiming with incoming messages. The neutral alien's expression shifted from confusion to alarm as data flooded in. Admiral Vextar called out, I'm receiving reports of celebrations throughout human space. Kane nodded. New Sydney Colony declared a planetary holiday. They're calling it Finally Day. Mars Base Prime is apparently taking bets on how long the war will last. The Europa Mining Consortium has suspended all operations because their workers are too excited to focus. He reached the chamber's exit before turning back one final time. You see, Commander, the one thing we learned during our 1,000 years of peace is that humans need conflict to truly live. We've been very, very bored. As Admiral Kane left the chamber, emergency communications began flooding in from across the galaxy. Human colonies weren't panicking or evacuating. They were mobilizing, but not in any way the assembled delegates recognized. Gaming guilds were volunteering their fleets. University war colleges were submitting tactical analyses. Children were asking their parents if they could watch the battles live. And in the depths of human space, systems that had been dormant for a millennium began powering up. Ancient shipyards that had been converted to museums started receiving workers who somehow still remembered how to operate thousand-year-old machinery. The galaxy was about to remember why humanity had chosen isolation, and why that choice had been so wise. The galaxy remembers why 3 days after the declaration of war, the first Zephyrian scouting fleet arrived at the edge of human space. Admiral Thrax commanded the expedition personally, leading 50 of his finest warships toward the human colony of Frontier's Edge. Intelligence reports suggested it was a mining world with minimal defenses and easy target to demonstrate Zephyrian superiority. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the civilian transport vessel Wandering Star, watching the alien fleet approach on her sensors. At 34, she was young for a ship captain, but she had been running freight between human colonies for over a decade. More importantly, she was the current reigning champion of the Sol System Fleet Combat Championships. "Sir," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead alien vessel." "Put it through," Chen replied, settling back in her captain's chair with a slight smile. Admiral Thrax's imposing figure appeared on the main screen. His forearms spread wide in what humans would later learn was a gesture of dominance among his species. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Zephyrian space. Surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded or face the consequences of resistance." Sarah Chen looked at her small crew of 8 and burst into laughter. Her crew joined in, filling the bridge with mirth that clearly confused the alien admiral. "I'm sorry," Chen said, wiping tears from her eyes, "but did you just claim this is Zephyrian space? This is the Frontier's Edge system. It's been human territory for 800 years. "Not anymore," Thrax declared. "By right of conquest. All human territories now belong to the Zephyrian Empire. Right of conquest." Chen's amusement faded to something more focused. "Admiral, with all due respect, you can't conquer something you haven't fought for yet. And before you fight humans, there's something you should probably know." She gestured to her tactical officer, who began transmitting data to the Zephyrian fleet. "Those readings you're getting from our single, unarmed transport ship, that's not a malfunction in your sensors. We really are carrying that much firepower." Thrax studied his displays, confusion evident in his alien features. The human vessel registered energy signatures that should have been impossible for something of its size. "Impossible. Your ship shows no visible weapon systems. That's because you're looking for weapons designed by people who still think war is about ships shooting at other ships," Chen explained patiently. "Admiral, what's the maximum effective range of your fleet's primary weapons?" 50,000 kilometers. Thrax replied proudly. "The finest in the galaxy. That's adorable." Chen said, "My ship's maximum engagement range is approximately 1 light year. Watch." The Wandering Star suddenly ... disappeared. Not destroyed, not jumped to hyperspace, but simply vanished from all sensors simultaneously. Thrax's fleet went to full alert, scanning frantically for the missing human vessel. Then their long-range sensors detected something impossible. The human ship was now positioned 3 million kilometers away. Somehow, having crossed that distance instantaneously, micro-wormhole generators, Chen's voice came through communications. Though her ship remained invisible to their sensors, "We developed them for cargo transport during the peaceful years. Turns out they have other applications." Suddenly, Thrax's flagship shuddered as something struck its shields. Not a weapon blast, but a physical projectile moving at incredible velocity. That was a warning shot, Chen explained cheerfully. A small asteroid, accelerated to about 15% of light speed. We call it kinetic bombardment, though my grandmother's generation had a cruder name for it. More impacts struck the Zephyrian fleet as invisible projectiles hammered their shields from impossible angles. The human ships seemed to be everywhere at once, firing from positions that should have been empty space. Your shields are impressive, Chen continued, as if discussing the weather. They'll probably hold for another, 6 minutes at this rate. Fair warning, I'm about to show you what we learned during our peaceful years about defensive warfare. The space around the Zephyrian fleet began to fill with strange distortions. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist as Chen deployed technologies that violated everything the aliens understood about physics. Gravity wells, she explained helpfully, artificially created. We discovered that you can make space itself into a weapon if you're creative enough. Your ships are now trapped in a pocket of compressed space-time. You can't move, can't jump to hyperspace, and can't even turn around. Admiral Thrax watched in growing horror as his mighty fleet became completely helpless, held motionless by forces beyond his comprehension. This is impossible, he whispered. No species has this level of technology. You're right, Chen agreed. No species that's been fighting wars for the last 1,000 years could develop this level of technology. We could only do it because we stopped fighting and started thinking. She paused, letting that sink in. Admiral, you're looking at the results of what happens when the most warlike species in galactic history spends a millennium with nothing to do but figure out better ways to fight. The tactical display on Thrax's ship suddenly lit up with new contacts. Hundreds of them, thousands. They seemed to be materializing from nowhere, surrounding his trapped fleet. Those are human civilian vessels, Chen explained. Gaming clubs, mostly. The Andromeda War Society, the Mars Tactical Guild, the new Tokyo Strategic Gaming Alliance. Word got out that someone finally declared war on us, and they all volunteered to help. Each new contact that appeared carried energy signatures similar to Chun's ship. The Zephyrian fleet was now surrounded by what appeared to be the most powerful armada in galactic history, and it was made up entirely of hobbyists and enthusiasts. How Thrax managed to ask, "Admiral, do you know what humans did with our industrial capacity during our peaceful years? We didn't need to build warships, so we built ... everything else. Civilian ships with military-grade capabilities, research vessels that could double as battleships, cargo haulers that could outgun your flagships." A new voice joined the communication channel, speaking with calm authority. "Admiral Thrax, this is General Marcus Rodriguez of the Human Colonial Defense Force." The screen split to show a middle-aged human in what appeared to be simple fatigues. Rodriguez had spent 30 years studying alien military tactics as a hobby, writing theoretical papers on optimal conquest strategies for every known species in the galaxy. "General Rodriguez," Thrax said, hope creeping into his voice. "At last. A professional soldier. Surely you understand the rules of civilized warfare." Rodriguez smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Professional soldier. Admiral, I'm a teacher. I run the War Studies program at the University of New Mars, but I appreciate the compliment." He gestured to something off-screen, and Thrax's displays showed new information that made his exoskeleton turn pale gray. "These are the current positions of your main fleet," Rodriguez continued. 17,000 vessels, approaching the outer system of humanity's capital world. They're about to encounter the local defense force. "Diffusier Force Thrax, seized on this. How many ships? Ships? Oh, Admiral, you're still thinking in terms of ships. Rodriguez chuckled. We stopped thinking about space warfare in terms of ships about 600 years ago, to limiting the display change to show Earth's solar system, where Thrax's main fleet was indeed approaching. But instead of defensive fleets moving to intercept them, something else was happening. The asteroids were moving, not just a few, but thousands of them, shifting from their natural orbits to form complex patterns that resembled ... formations. Automated asteroid fortresses, Rodriguez explained. Each one carries more firepower than your average battleship. We built them during the peaceful years as an engineering exercise. Turns out, when you hollow out an asteroid and fill it with weapons, it makes an excellent mobile defensive platform. But the asteroids weren't the worst surprise waiting for the Zephyrian fleet. As they approached closer to the inner system, space itself began to change. Ah, Rodriguez said with satisfaction. They've activated the solar defense grid. You're about to see something special, Admiral. The star itself began to pulse with unnatural rhythms. Solar flares erupted in precise patterns, guided by massive installations built into the sun's corona. During our peaceful years, our scientists got bored and decided to see if they could weaponize stellar phenomena. Rodriguez continued conversationally. Turns out, you can. Those solar flares are carrying directed energy payloads equivalent to your entire fleet's combined firepower. Admiral Thrax watched in stunned silence as his seemingly unstoppable armada encountered defenses that turned entire star systems into weapons. His ships weren't just outnumbered, they were outclassed by technologies he couldn't even comprehend. This is insanity, he whispered. No species should have this power. You're absolutely right, Rodriguez agreed. That's exactly what we decided 1,000 years ago. It's why we chose isolation. We realized we had become too dangerous to exist alongside other species. The human teacher's expression grew more serious. Admiral, your species evolved from herbivores. You understand fear as a survival mechanism. You build armies for protection. But humans evolved as persistence hunters. We don't build armies for protection. We build them because organizing makes the killing more efficient. He paused, letting the weight of those words settle in. For 1,000 years, every other species in the galaxy has lived in safety because humanity chose self-imposed exile. We removed ourselves from galactic affairs not because we were weak, but because we were too strong. Then why? Thrax asked desperately. Why reveal this now? Why not continue your isolation? Because, Rodriguez said sadly, you declared war on us. And there's one thing about humans that 1,000 years of peace couldn't change. When someone declares war on us, we take it very, very personally. Captain Chen's voice rejoined the communication. Admiral, I'm going to give you a choice. You can order your fleets to withdraw immediately, return to Zephyrian space, and never threaten humanity again. Or you can continue this war and discover exactly why every other species in the galaxy was wise enough to leave us alone. She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. But understand this, if you choose to continue, you won't just be fighting the human military, you'll be fighting every human who spent their entire life studying war as entertainment. Every gamer who's perfected impossible strategies. Every theorist who's designed weapons that exist only in nightmares. Every child who's grown up dreaming of the day they could test their ancestors' legacy. Admiral Thrax looked at his trapped fleet surrounded by impossible technologies wielded by beings who had turned warfare into an art form. He thought of his mighty empire, proud and strong, facing an enemy that had spent a millennium preparing for a war they hoped would never come. "We surrender," he whispered. "Good choice," Chen replied. "Welcome to the galaxy's most important lesson. Some sleeping giants should be left alone." As the Zephyrian fleet began its long journey home, carrying news of humanity's true nature back to their empire, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. The secret that had kept the peace for 1,000 years was out. Humanity was no longer hiding. And after a millennium of restraint, they remembered exactly why they were so good at being dangerous. The age of human isolation was over. Whether that was good or bad, for the galaxy remained to be seen.